everybody. Welcome to the Macabre Podcast universe. It's the only podcast
that exists to prove people wrong.
No, that exists.
When
They've
they
all
say,
been wiped out.
But what do we do?
Well, we actually exist for a specific purpose, and that is to prove people wrong when they say this.
Sequels are never better than the originals.
That's exactly what we do here. And we are covering a series that won our bracket, and it is the Underworld series. A series that has been much requested by one member of my family.
One person that has a lot of wonderful friends.
Yes, and they all
have not seen this series, I'm sure.
Yeah, so you're having a pretty strong reaction to Underworld, Jordan.
No, this movie was much better than the first one. Still did not like it, but much, much better.
Yeah,
and you know why they have so many of them? I thought about this today. There are so many of these gosh darn movies because they keep creating more. They keep just not fleshing. They keep spitting out exposition. We're only on movie 2, but they can't help but give us a backstory. They're obsessed with it, and they don't align, but they just love spitting out info. So they're like, well, there's a movie, there's a movie, there's a movie, there's a movie.
Yeah, but here's what's weird. So in the last movie, they were like, hey, here's how all the vampires and werewolves started, and also this random human thing. And then in this movie, they were like, hey, so remember how we explained that? We're going to explain it some more. And then
but not exactly like we did the first time.
Right, and then the next movie is a prequel about the war. So I'm like, it's not that they're expanding the mythology, it's that they just are like, are you sure you guys get this thing?
We could have gotten it the first time one time if it was written correctly.
Yeah.
Written well.
But right off the bat, I did like this movie a lot more than the previous movie. Fairly significantly. And I was pretty shocked that it was the same director because the movie looked way better.
Yeah, the action was better.
The action was way better, which maybe we'll get into more specifically. But before we do that, let's talk about who made it. This movie was directed by Len Wiseman, who directed the last one. The screenplay is by Danny McBride, not that Danny McBride, who did the last one. The story is by Len and Danny, who did the last one, along with that other guy. The cinematography is Simon Dugan, who did iRobot, Live Free or Die Hard, Nicolas Cage's Knowing.
This movie, I did not like how it looked.
Yeah, I didn't mind how it looked. It was too blue.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind like the cinematography by any means. I thought they did a good job of making it a little more horror-y than the previous one.
Yeah.
But I mean, it could definitely be better. But there was a couple like shots and action sequences where I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Which is kind of more than I was expecting after the previous entry.
Yeah.
I mean, the bar has been really lowered. Simon Dugan also did Mummy 3 and Hacksaw Ridge. The music is by Marco Beltrami, who we've talked about on Scream and also Fear Street and many other movies. And though this is not a memorable score, I do not think this... I did notice during the movie, I was like, this score is at least competent.
Yeah. Because
the last movie was the most incompetent score I'd ever heard in a movie, I think. So that was a big upgrade. The movie was put in a really great place to release a movie, January 20th, 2006. In case you don't know, folks.
Oh, okay.
I'm being facetious.
I'm trying to think of historically like what happened that day. But no, you just mean movie-wise. Never a good time to release. That's where you dump.
Occasionally, you'll get a Megan here and there for fun. It feels like Jason Blum is trying to kind of like
capitalize on it.
Yeah, take January's and be like, we're going to have a nice, fun, cheesy horror movie.
What helped was didn't Get Out come out in February?
Yeah. So maybe that kind of like...
Blumhouse.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, maybe that kind of cued in the idea.
Yeah.
But also, February is Black History Month, and that movie's very, about that experience. And because I remember they released Black Panther, and they made February. A big deal that it was in Black History Month. So that could be part of that as well. But Jason's sitting there, and he's like, not that Jason, but Jason Blum is sitting there, and he's like, I got an idea. Let's try out January. Megan, show it to him. This movie had a $45 million budget. It made 62 in the U.S. and it
Okay.
made 113 worldwide.
Okay, made a lot of money.
So they thought, let's make another one.
It's those boobs.
It is those boobs. So there's really not a lot about this movie. Unfortunately, I did find that Len Weissman said that they conceived it as a trilogy.
Okay.
And we sort of mapped out an entire history and story, a massive collection of ideas.
Again, they never made it past the first draft. They did the first draft and they were like, yeah, great.
And stories that we're putting out at certain times. So, But then I also found this that I found very, very funny, more due to where culture has come with studio blockbuster movies.
Okay.
Because I think I watched this movie and I watched Underworld, and I think there's actually a surprising amount of practicality in these movies from what I would assume they would do today. And there's a critic for the New York Times, Jeanette Katsolis, and she criticized the film's steel blue filter. Agreed. And she described the movie as a monotonous barrage of computer-generated fur and fangs.
Oh, honey.
And it's like, whoa, you have no idea what's coming.
Yeah. It's nothing but computerized fur and fangs.
Yeah.
And that Marvel special that came out,
Werewolf by Night.
That was practical. I mean, I know
some
not
of it, yeah.
all of it, but like they had a suit, right?
I think so. They definitely had a suit for Swamp or Man Thing.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing behind the scenes and I was like, that was real?
Oh, wow. I don't think I knew that.
It was like puppeted.
Dang.
Guy.
Yeah. That's cool. That was. I mean, that would be weird. I feel like if you're making more of a horror bent Marvel, little special, but it's a little horror. It would be stupid if they didn't.
Well, this is
make it practical somehow.
The very funny.
Was that cool? I remember it being really cool.
Yeah, it was cool. I think it, to me, I was like, oh, that was fun. I don't think I was like blown away by it. But it was certainly good.
Yeah.
It's the classic Marvel thing that happens all the time where they're like, we're doing a horror thing, and you watch it and you're like, okay, it's kind of horror. You know what I mean? Like, it never really fully commits.
Yeah.
But that one was maybe the most out there thing that they've done.
A little bit, though. What do you expect from Marvel?
No, I know, but it's like, it's like how everyone says Winter Soldier's really a 70s espionage movie.
Oh.
And you're like, yeah, but when you watch a 70s espionage movie, it's nothing like Winter Soldier. That's a superhero movie. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I don't think that usually when they say that they're secretly like another genre, they're usually not really that much.
Like how Ant-Man's like a heist movie.
Yeah, and it's like, so it not really.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't like follow the rules of heist movies. Yeah. Well, it kind of does. See our episodes on that. But anyway, but Werewolf by Night, good. It's fun. And it is probably the most closely associated with the genre that it's riffing on than anything else they've released, potentially, right off the top. But you mentioned computer graphics. I mentioned computer graphics. And, we both listened recently to Blank Check's...
They Live?
Yeah, episode on They Live. And one of the guests said something really interesting because, there's always like anti-CGI and then there's pro-CGI. And, much like anything, a balance of both can be fine. But one of them said, in a totally not like trying to start something bad kind of way, he just said, can you think of an instance in a horror movie, that genre, where computer graphics heighten the experience, and if it was practical, it would have lessened the experience? And they cited a couple examples I didn't know.
I'm already forgetting some that they said, though.
Yeah, I guess there's a like Demon and Conjuring 2 that's pretty interesting. That's what CGI? It sounded like. Yeah. And it sounded like physically you couldn't do it.
Yeah, they did talk about that. And then I thought, man, I gotta watch the movie one of these days. I have started that movie more than once, and I don't know what it is, but I just like am not in the mood ever to watch it. And that's still one. And it's becoming a me thing. Yeah. It is. It's not becoming. It is a me thing. It's almost like the devil's making you do it. But yeah, and I was kind of thinking in my head, and I think very specifically the horror genre, it's really hard to make CGI as exciting as practicality. What do you think about It? That was another one they did. I think... Not all of it, but some of it, for what it was, CGI, I thought I think
I think particularly the ending of the first movie was a
Yeah.
really good use of CG
yeah.
for horror.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think for the most part they actually did pretty good.
Yeah.
But there were still many sequences in both of those movies that I thought, if this was practical, I would like this more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's hard to think of examples that are good even today. Because even like we are big defenders. We're good defenders. We're big defenders of the new Halloween trilogy that are quite controversial. I think those movies are great, but I do think there's too much CGI, especially in kills and ends.
Oh, okay.
There's just a lot of the blood is CG and stuff like that. From my memory, anyway. Okay. And it's still like I think there's just too much CGI in it.
Yeah.
Like because even we watched Halloween 4 the other day, and that's a bad example because they kind of don't show most of the kills in that movie.
No, it's kind of funny.
But it's always more exciting in slashers. In slashers, I don't think people should use CGI.
That's what we talked. We watched Beetlejuice recently.
Yes, we did.
And apparently they're making a new one or a sequel. And you said, I think you said like it sucks that the sandworm's going to be CGI.
Yeah. It sucks that like a lot of the movie will probably be I just don't see how Burton,
especially when I was reading about that movie at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
The other day.
Can you tell people about that thing that happens now or no?
That I have to wake up in the middle of the night to feed a baby.
And
I just look at
whatever we watched the night before. I just
read about whatever movie we watched that evening. So Beetlejuice was up.
So at like 7 a.m., I'm like finishing up coffee and stuff. And she's like, okay, so here's the thing. In Beetlejuice, there was this thing. You remember that scene where...
Yeah.
And I love it.
So I think if I remember right, it was intentional for Tim Burton to make it as B movie as possible. Especially the sandworm stuff and like effects stuff. Just to go hard on B movie stuff. I imagine that part of that was also budget.
Yeah.
I can never remember where that... Well, that's before... This movie came out before Batman.
I think this is the movie before Batman, yeah. Isn't this his second movie? Isn't it Pee-wee, then Beetlejuice?
Pee-wee's his first movie?
Yeah.
Man, I can never keep his movies straight.
Well, and that was a pretty big hit, so Beetlejuice was like, okay, you got a little bit of a carte blanche.
Yeah.
And then Batman, of course. Then it's like he's riding that the rest of his career.
Yeah, but that was like a point for him to make it B movie, apparently.
Yeah,
B movie-esque, so cheesy.
That's his love for Ed Wood probably showing.
Yeah, but with this new movie, is he making the new movie? Apparently,
yes. Yeah.
It just sucks because he's not going to do that.
I know.
At all.
I did. So okay, let's just tell people what we're doing. So on Patreon. For the rest of this year, we're finishing up some series. We're doing Howl's Moving Castle this month, and then we're doing the Ghost Rider movies. But then next year, we are doing an in-depth study because our Patreon podcast is just movies with 2 entries. So next year, we're doing an in-depth study, 6 series that only have 2 entries, but they're specifically legacy sequels. So it's something like we'll cover Top Gun, Top Gun Maverick, Blade Runner 2049, things like that. And it's all kind of in anticipation of Beetlejuice. Because that's what gave me the idea. Because I knew Beetlejuice 2 was coming out, and I thought, you know what, it'd be interesting to just explore this topic.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different ways that people have handled that. Some are great, some are absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to dive into that. So that's your teaser. But all that to say, when we watched Beetlejuice the other night, I thought it is slightly possible that this could work. But my fear is they're going to go the Top Gun Maverick route, which hardly ever works, though I love Top Gun Maverick, where they go, let's remake the first movie and just solely ride this on nostalgia, but provide enough new and interesting
and trick people
things
into remembering that the first movie was good.
Yeah.
When the first movie is just kind of okay. I mean, it's good. It's not great.
Yeah.
You know?
But like Top Gun is like kind of the same plot and everything, but like there's so much passion and there's so many cool stunts and there's so much extra stuff that makes it bombastic and exciting that it enhances both. But I fear that Beetlejuice 2, they're going to be like, remember Winona Ryder? Remember Ryder? What did I say?
Ryder.
And they're going to be like, remember the sandworms? Remember this person?
Do we know if the sequel is like a Hawaiian flair?
I've seen an image and it looks suburban.
Okay, because that was his original, like when Beetlejuice came out.
Goes to Hawaii.
Yeah, it was like an immediate green light for a sequel, and it would have been Beetlejuice in Hawaii.
Yeah, which is kind of fun.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But, I don't want it.
Yeah, I think it's too perfect, and I think it's been too long to do a sequel.
Yeah.
I really think the movie's going to be terrible.
Yeah. You had mentioned, though, like...
too much reverence. I think they're going to give too much reverence to everything, and that's going to be a problem.
And that's one of those funny things where it's like, is nothing sacred? And the issue is everything sacred.
Yeah.
So, what was I going to say? Oh, and you had mentioned that maybe that movie could work if Michael Keaton was the only returning cast member.
That's what I thought. New bioexorcist.
I have seen that Winona Ryder's attached.
She shouldn't be in it.
No.
Why would they deal with him again?
Because you know that Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis won't be.
Yeah. Or it'll be Gina Davis.
No, I don't think she acts anymore. I think she's like out of Hollywood.
Probably.
I think. But yeah.
It just doesn't, like, it's just silly. The legacy sequels are tough. So all of next year, that's the topic we're going to be studying on our Patreon podcast. So you should definitely sign up for as little as $3, get a free trial, etc. But tell me about who's in Underworld after that.
Underworld Evolution. I don't know if we ever actually said the title.
Yeah.
So playing Marcus, who was referenced to several times in the last movie, we finally get to see him, played by Tony Curran. I don't know how you say it. He is in, I saw 24.
He's said that. You were like, I bet that guy's been in 24.
I did say that.
Wow.
And he's in Secret Invasion, not in Vikings, but in Sons of Anarchy. So it's either one or the other, and he's in that one. Okay. Just seems like,
yeah.
You watch enough things, and you start thinking that you could be good as a casting director. He's also in Your Honor, The Calling. He does voice acting for stuff like Transformers and I think it was video games. Ray Donovan. World of Warcraft. And
voice acting or the movie?
Voice acting.
Okay, cool.
I saw a little trivia about him in this movie that it was stipulated in his contract that he would wear fangs even while not filming. And that person's a piece of work. That's true. And would have hated to work with that person.
I really got to get into character of a giant bat. Okay, so I'm going to need a funded trip to Peru where there's these famous bats so I can live in the caves of Peru. And I don't even know if there's bats in Peru. Aren't there bats everywhere?
Right.
I think so. But
anyway, woof. He's not even a werewolf.
Yeah. I hope that's just one of those IMDb trivias that's not true.
Oh, I think he's in Blade 2 as well.
Really?
I think I saw that, but
come on.
Can you look? Well, no, I can do it. I have it right here.
You have it right there. I don't even have IMDb open on my phone. Bless you, baby.
Yeah, he's in Blade 2.
Oh, okay.
He's Priest.
Okay.
So he must be on the team?
Must be. I bet he's on the bad team.
Oh, okay.
Or no, wait. No.
There was just one.
Their team turns out to be bad. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
Derek Jacobi plays Corvinus. He's in Gladiator. That's how I recognized him, I believe. Also Dead Again, Gosford Park, Anonymous, Good Omens, Sandman. Who's Erasmus Fry?
Oh.
Can you look up the character?
Yeah.
Because I also could not remember that. And then a million other things. And then Stephen McIntosh plays Tanis. That's the guy we thought was Paul Bettany.
Yeah.
He is also in The Jacket, Memphis Belle, The Pact.
Oh, okay. He's the guy that the writer gets the muse from, who's had it locked in his mansion for years.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, Stephen McIntosh. I've said enough. I know I did not mention anything that you and I would have known him from, but we did recognize him. I'm not doing a deep dive. Brian Steele plays William, the big werewolf. He is also in Hellboy. He is a predator in Predators.
Oh, very cool.
He's in Doom. Your Highness.
David Gordon Green movie.
He plays a Minotaur. and a Danny McBride movie, but that Danny McBride.
So
that movie sucks, right?
That's all I've heard. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's who's the Guillermo del Toro guy?
Oh boy.
No, the long skinny guy who's in What We Do in the Shadows, and he's always in makeup. What's his
Doug
name?
Jones.
So Doug Jones is the skinny guy you hire, and then if you want a beefy guy, you hire this guy.
Yes. Yeah.
What's his name again?
Brian Steele, with an E at the end. He's also in The Empty
Brian
Man.
Steele? And okay. All right, I'm laying my cards on the table. Brian Steele, MVP of the entire series so far. The werewolf costume and the way that he's moving.
Yeah, he looks awesome. He's so cool.
I took this movie to, I gave it a heart on Letterboxd because and simply because of the werewolf design and how he acted.
You have not seen Anchorman 2?
I saw some of it and then left in the theater.
Did you get to a part where there's a were hyena?
I don't think so.
Okay, so you can't explain that to me.
No.
So that's about it. We have a lot of returning people.
Yeah.
I saw that the little girl in Celine's flashbacks is her daughter, her and Michael Sheen's daughter.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that they were together.
Yep.
So, the movie begins, and there's a title card that explains the Corvinus strain, the werewolves, the vampires, and their fighting. Now, while that is quite clunky to start a movie with a title card, and is rarely the correct thing to do, but sometimes it works.
Worked for this one because we were lost.
I was so thankful because my biggest complaint about the last movie is I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know who to care for, except for the fact that I knew who the main character was. And this movie, right away, I was like, this title card should have been at the beginning of the last movie.
But here's a question I have.
Yeah.
In the last movie, they said there were 3 brothers.
Mm-hmm.
One that's immortal,
Yeah.
one that's a vampire, one that's a werewolf. Origins.
Yeah.
And their dad is this dude that survived this plague.
Yeah.
And gave birth to these 3 sons.
Yes.
In this movie, they have completely abandoned the idea of this third son.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know partly there's no, he has nothing to do with this story.
Yeah.
But I think they also forgot, and they just made the dad the immortal one. But they said there were 3 brothers, right? They said that.
So I was like, did I misunderstand that? Because, so in the last movie, I had to look up that whole thing because it was presented so confusingly. And then in this movie, they explain it quite nicely, but they don't mention anything about the third brother. So I went to fandom.com, of course, the Underworld wiki page, and I was looking up, is it Anthony Corvinus or whoever the dad's name
Alexander, I think.
Yeah. And he does have a son, and that's who Scott Speedman is the
descendant of.
And that's why they were able to create a
hybrid. In this movie, they were just like, goodbye. That person is, from all accounts, didn't exist.
It's just this series so far, and this movie falls under the same sin. It's so hilarious that it's a lot of cool ideas, but they're just not well thought out.
They're not.
And it
There's
really
more than one person working on this.
Yeah. But it really makes you appreciate your Christopher Nolans and your J.R.R. Tolkien's and stuff, where it's they create rules and they have to follow them.
Yeah.
And this is pretty willy-nilly about the
said,
rules.
Without rules, there's chaos. So then to get right off the bat to get this out of the way.
Yeah.
So the first movie.
There's a reason I mentioned J.R.R. Tolkien.
So the first movie is these people are kind of riding on the tails of Matrix.
Ripping off would be a strong word, but a correct one.
Yeah, I'm trying to put it delicately, but yeah. This movie is ripping off Lord of the Rings. So much to the point that throughout this movie, they're people. I think they're in the process of becoming a werewolf, and they straight up look like an orc. They look like
orcs.
It looks like they acquired discarded orc costumes that were slightly damaged in the making for Lord of the Rings, and they weren't good enough for production. So they got them at a discount. That's what they look like, and this scene was even shot like that. The garbs that they're the armor that they're wearing is you're from Gondor.
No, they look like the riders of Rohirrim.
Yeah.
They actually, I'm pretty sure it's the same design.
Same discount. They probably were banged up a little bit during the making of, and they weren't suitable for production, and now they're being sold at discount.
It was.
And they swooped it.
It was I was kind of surprised. I'm like, this has got to be a New Line Cinema movie, right? Because this is crazy.
It was bananas.
And they even, like, I promise you, they studied the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
Because the lighting looked similar. Like, a lot of the shots looked similar. And I was like, this is... And again, like, all artists take what they know and what their influences, and then they create their own vision. But there's a difference between doing that and being like, hey, I'm just gonna do a Lord of the Rings scene in my movie.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's scenes in the Rings of Power show that look less like Lord of the Rings than this scene looked like.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah.
So it starts off and it shows, I mean, it looked good because it's Lord of the Rings looks good. But it showed this sequence back in like the 8th century or something like that where the Corvinus brothers, like the dad and then the vampire one, Marcus, they show up somewhere and they see it's been attacked by werewolves.
Oh, the dad was with them? I thought it was Bill Nighy. Bill Nighy.
Oh, no, it was.
Victor.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Victor.
Who I think drank his way through the movie, which is so mean to say. That's so rude. But he sounded a little off.
He did sound a little off.
And he does, yeah, I don't need to get into it. But just a lot of slurring of the speech.
It just seemed like maybe he owed someone some money or he really was interested in buying something expensive.
Yes.
Because there was no passion in that performance.
So, from my understanding, this town had been ravaged upon by werewolves.
Yes.
So then these vampires came to it. Oh, no, this is what it was. I'm now just realizing it. His brother William ravaged the town.
Yeah.
So these vampires came and they're like, we got to kill all these people. Well, or like whatever you do to kill a werewolf, I guess, before they turn into werewolves.
Well, later in history, we'll shoot them with bullets, and that's how we kill them.
Don't get me started about that. That's later. So they start like hacking up people, but they're too late. All these people are turning into werewolves.
Yeah.
So now it's this big action sequence. And then off in the woods, they've captured his brother William.
Yeah.
Who we kind of see, not much.
Uh-huh.
But they capture him there, and they're gonna imprison him for eternity because he can't control himself. Yeah. So this is a criticism I have on the movie too. His brother is a werewolf and can never not be a werewolf because he's like the first.
Yeah.
And this movie's called Evolution. We all know what that means.
Yeah.
So basically they're imprisoning him for like the world's safety, but also it's a power play.
Yeah.
Marcus, we see later on in our present day, he looks freaking cool.
Yeah.
That guy probably had 12 hours of makeup to look the way he looked.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Very bat-like.
Yeah.
And so he's the first vampire. So he does look like that. We get to see him use his claws to do things like...
That's not why he looks like that, though, Jordan.
Why?
I'm sorry to cut you off because...
But don't you think by the logic of the movie, like, he should always look like that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah, and I see your point because
the werewolf always has to be a werewolf.
Yeah.
He should always have to look like that monster.
Absolutely. Like a Nosferatu kind of thing.
Yes.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. But what I found out, because later in this movie, Selene and Michael are in this fight, and he says, he's a hybrid, right? And she goes, yeah.
And then we go...
Later, within 10 minutes, she says, you're the only hybrid there's ever been. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about?
They're using the word hybrid fast and loose.
So then I Google it because I'm confused. There was a sequence earlier, and I just thought it had to do with blood memories. I didn't realize that it changed him, where the werewolf guy who explained the whole Corvinus thing in the last movie, his blood went down into Marcus's tomb and turned him into the hybrid, and that's why he looks like a bat. Because he has werewolf in him. That's why he looks like a bat, Jordan. Can you believe that? It doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it doesn't. I was leaning down to get a baby.
Yeah, no, I covered it pretty well.
It makes no sense.
I don't get that. So here is, I'm going to give a point to Underworld Evolution, the sequel to the moderately successful Underworld, which is, I do always enjoy when a sequel takes place immediately after the first movie. I think that's fun.
Yeah.
And in this movie, they do something that you pointed out that is also cool, where you kind of expect, because it's like, okay, Marcus is out, Selene is a fugitive from the vampires and the werewolves, basically. It's a bit of a John Wick kind of situation. It's like everybody is after her now. And
They take care of Craven right away.
but yeah, that was the point where it's like Marcus just kills Craven like immediately, and you kind of thought, oh, he's going to be like the bad guy of this movie.
Or
Craven.
he has more to do or something. And they don't even, for a movie that's so far, 2 movies that are so poorly written, they smartly got rid of someone who has nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Rather than like convolute a reason
right.
for him.
So,
and boy, did they get rid of him. Movie is gorier, and I say thumbs up to that.
Yeah. And it is funny that every time there's action, there's like flashing lights, but I think it works.
It's also, I think,
that.
a time thing, back then thing.
But it makes it more horror-y than the last one.
Yes,
instead of just
this
Matrix.
movie looks more horror-y. That's a terrible word. This movie is more
a lot more horror-y.
Shot more like a horror thing. And what was I going to say? Oh gosh, I forgot.
Well, and don't you feel like this movie? It's not really a movie. It's a film, Jordan. Don't you think?
Film.
Don't you think it's a film? Yeah. So there's this other concept in the movie. I'm speaking more about the movie conceptually in a lot of ways because
you sort of have to.
You sort of have to
try and figure out the choices people are making.
Now, there's this thing they introduce in this movie that I think they follow it through to its end. So it's like it does actually follow the rules of this series, but I don't like it at all. And that is something called blood memories.
Oh, yeah.
They kind of did it in the last movie, but I didn't realize to this extent.
Lazy. That's all it is. It's lazy. So in order for certain characters to learn certain information, they just randomly threw in, if a vampire drinks someone's blood, they just have their memories.
Yeah.
And they just did it. And it's I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would ever like it, but I could see a world where maybe you explain it better or do something better with it. That it's like, yeah, sure, you're drinking that person's life force. You're getting their life literally, including their memories.
Yeah.
This is just a lazy vehicle for them to get information.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And it's
also, I've been wagging my finger a lot while watching these movies, and I'm doing it right now. I don't care for vampires drinking the blood of other vampires.
Yeah, what's that?
I don't. Maybe that's a thing, or some. I don't. Why would it ever need to be a thing? You know what I mean? I don't like it. I like to think that vampires are like bloodless, and that's what they're bloodless. They're always craving life, the life force of someone else, which is the blood, and they never have it.
I don't like to think of them as bloodless, but not like. It's like their pulse is slow, kind of a vibe. That's what I get. What I imagine.
I'd like to think they have no pulse because they're undead.
Yeah, I guess so. But they did a fun thing in What We Do in the Shadows this last season. That makes me think of this, where Guillermo tries to turn early, but he's like not turning properly. So the whole season they're trying to figure out why he isn't like a full vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And they do this experiment. And I know that What We Do in the Shadows is not necessarily the rule book to vampires, but it is funny because they
play on the rules.
They have a scene where it's like, well, maybe let's bite a vampire a second time and see if that what happens.
A vampire bites him a second time?
No, remember they do an experiment where a vampire bites another vampire and the vampire explodes.
Oh yeah. What's the thing in Interview with the Vampire? Brad Pitt gets bit by Tom.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt drinks Tom's blood. Like he drinks a vampire's blood to kind of like.
Oh, I don't remember that. Oh, okay. It's so you're trying to find out if there is some sort of rule that is maybe a little more classical.
Kind of. How do vampires work in Interview with a Vampire?
How do vampires work? You're going to get such a long article on how they work. And then it's like Anne Rice versus the movie versus the TV show, you know?
No. Well, I want the Anne Rice one because that's probably just what they did in the movie and the TV show.
Maybe. You never know with adaptions. This is, proof of that if it was an adaptation. I'm trying to cover.
I know.
I'm trying to cover so bad. I don't want to edit this in between spot. So I'm going to keep on talking. We're going to get through this. And
Okay.
here we go.
The process of converting a human to a vampire is often referred to as the dark gift.
Can you more toward the mic?
And is regarded as profoundly okay. The feeding act is highly, we know that. The process begins with prolonged feeding periods, sometimes over this. Okay. Oh, gosh, I'm bored.
I'm going to look up something as well while
As
you
a
do
vampire
that.
drains the human's arteries almost dry, it is normal for the victim to experience severe symptoms of fatigue. Oh my gosh, it's like reading a medical journal. Okay, I've lost interest. It was just paragraph and paragraph, and it's hard to do it while recording a podcast.
Yeah, when a vampire is bitten by another vampire, the venom from the teeth will create a permanent bite mark, usually invisible to human eyes, and the pain is supposedly stinging but eventually passing. By licking the venom on an open wound or the edge of a dismembered limb, the wounds will heal successfully.
Did you just randomly Google this?
Yeah, what happens when a vampire bites a vampire? It depends. If the vampire that bites a healthy vampire is injured, they're usually able to heal the injuries.
Although Brad
that's
Pitt wasn't a
something.
vampire yet when he was bit by Tom Cruise. That's what turned him. I'm just trying to remember how he was turned. I feel like that was part of it. This is so boring. Let's just keep going.
We should keep going. But I agree with you. I don't like how they do it in this movie.
Yeah. It no good.
Yeah. It's again, it just feels so not thought out.
No.
And it
everything feels convenient.
Yeah. It just feels...
But it doesn't make sense, so it like bites him in the butt.
Right. I'm trying to think of like an analog, because like Christopher Nolan is so plot based.
Yeah.
But like his movies follow the rules that they set out. So it'd be like in Inception, if just halfway through or something, they're just like, oh, actually, we can just like leave this stage of the dream. Because I don't know, because of this reason, and you're like, you set up all of these rules, and now you just broke them. You know?
Man, I know. And so, this movie has to be so plot heavy because of the lore. So when it doesn't really make sense, your movie crumbles,
right?
Or the story crumbles,
and the lore doesn't make a whole lot of sense either.
So throughout this movie, going back to Underworld Evolution, the movie that we're talking about today. Throughout it, we keep going back to this old dude who's like on a ship, which I like the set. Yeah. The set's cool.
There's some good sets in this movie.
There are. Especially the last scene. I really liked that.
The last set was awesome.
Because it was real.
Yeah.
It was tangible.
It looked like an Indiana Jones type set.
It was on the right of Indiana Jones going across that bridge. And oh my gosh, is it going to collapse underneath us?
Yeah.
But we keep going to this guy who's old, and
frail even? No, he doesn't look frail.
And he is like kind of picking up the pieces of the events of the last movie, trying to figure out what's happening. Yeah. Somehow he gets the bodies of Lucian and Victor and other people. Like he knows these things that are happening. He's kind of investigating what's happening.
Yeah.
Which leads him, basically he's trying to track down his son, I guess.
Yeah, so we find out later in the movie that he is the original Corvinus.
He's Alexander.
Yeah.
The dad of Marcus and William.
Yeah. Which I actually, when they revealed that, I thought, I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to just like bash these movies. I do think that there is some stuff in them.
Yeah.
And so like, in the last movie, we complained a lot how it felt like every 20 minutes there was kind of a reveal.
Yeah.
And it felt like this movie was much more streamlined.
Yeah.
And that was like the big reveal. And that felt earned, and I was on board for that.
Yeah, so when he has Victor's body, he is like doing an autopsy essentially.
Yeah.
And we see this like weird contraption in his heart area.
Cool.
Interesting.
Contraption on your sternum? I'm in.
Yeah, and then throughout this movie, Selene and Dion, I'm kidding. Celine Dion.
Oh.
Celine and
Michael, played by Scott Speedman,
have this necklace thing that Lucian wore in the last movie. Basically, these things connect. They create a key, and that's what's going to free William.
Yeah, so like this idea. So like the big plot of the movie is William, big vampire.
No, werewolf.
Yeah, Marcus, big vampire, he loves his brother and he wants to
free him,
set him free, and they've like constantly kept him down because his animal urges, he would never be able to like not destroy stuff.
Question.
Well, let me 1 second, real quick. And so, like this overarching view of the plot of this movie, where it's kind of it's kind of an Indiana Jones plot, where it's like there's just like 2 keys, there's a relic, we gotta keep it safe and keep it hidden, and then it unleashes a beast at the end. I actually think that's great, and I like that much more than the previous plot.
2 questions.
Yeah.
First question. In the last movie, they said the war was started because Lucian and his girlfriend, wife, lover, who was a vampire, he was a werewolf. She was killed because she was pregnant with their hybrid child.
Yeah.
And is like, we can't have this, and her dad kills her.
Yeah, Victor.
And that's what starts the
Victor.
war, is this like Romeo and Juliet thing.
Yeah. And it is Victor,
and they have rewritten that for this movie, correct? They're now saying that the war started with William and Marcus. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically. Second question.
Well, I think if I give them the benefit of the doubt, there was kind of a little bit of this when you get to the scene with the orgy vampire, where it's like, I think the idea is there was like an original war, they capture William, war is over, and now the werewolves are subservient to the vampires.
Okay, I'll get on board with that.
And so they live like that for a while.
And then the Lucian thing happens.
And that's like the war.
Got it.
I get that.
I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
That's fine. Second question.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that answers my first.
Your second question?
No. Okay, wait. Second question. So, in the beginning of the movie with the Lord of the Rings flashback thing.
Yes.
They capture William, and they're going to imprison him, even though Marcus is like, no.
Yeah.
What happens to Marcus at the end of that scene?
He lives on as a vampire.
So he's just fine with it? For like they placate him for a while, and then he goes into his sleep. And then was his plan this whole time to get out of his sleep? I know he was supposed to be awoken now.
Yeah.
So was his whole plan like, once I awaken, I'm going to finally free my brother? Or did he get all those blood memories of what's happening and he's like, screw it, I'm going to free my brother? I don't know. This probably was explained. I'm just not quite remembering.
I don't know.
You don't think it was
I don't
explained?
think we need to give them the benefit that they explain one of these details.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Good point, though. So, basically, Scott Speedman, who is Michael.
You love saying his name.
I do love saying his name. He and Selene are, running away with the key, and they're trying to get away from Michael. Now, there is an action sequence. I got to give credit where credit's due. It's cool. They're driving away in a semi, and Marcus is flying around the semi. A lot of it looks actually pretty practical. And the way the vampire is moving and stuff, I just haven't seen an action scene like that. And I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
In that scene, he is able to get the key, I think.
Yes. I think.
Or no, they knock him off and they have the key still.
Okay. Yeah, because the next time they see him, he gets it.
And then this leads to some steam. I am telling you.
But before that, there's more things that are like just kind of like funny vampire stuff. And okay, wait. There's a lot of B-roll in this movie that are like kind of showcasing like slow motion cool vampire thing. Over here, like cool vampire claws, and they're showing it in such the most boring ways. One thing, earlier when Marcus is first awakened, I think, and he's like going to look at security footage, he it's like such a cool hand movement of his claws, and then he hunts and pecks on a keyboard. That's hilarious.
That's the best scene in the movie. Actually, no, it's the second best because there's the punch.
Yeah, and then there's another scene with claws that's also very funny where he does something else that's just like, that's just not cool. But the claws are cool.
Right. I think I wrote it down, so I'll point it out when we get there.
And then, so this scene when Selene and Scott Speedman get to the warehouse.
Yeah.
She is burned because the sun's coming out.
Yeah.
And I'll backtrack to this thing, but he puts her in like a locker container.
This is so
And then
dumb.
he runs to the bathroom and like pulls the first aid kit off the wall, and it's in slow. It's one of those things like we're obsessed with. Maybe during this time where it's like normal frame rate, and then they slow it down right as he rips it off the wall.
Let me just see
and it's
while
like,
you're
why
talking.
Why does this have to be a big dramatic thing?
I think there's a reason why it might have been slow motion. Well, no, this would have come out earlier in the year, but 300 did come out later that same year.
That's the culprit. That's what I'm thinking of.
But-
300 loved doing that. Oh, that's a Zack Snyder thing.
But it came out later in the year.
Oh, okay.
Because remember this, they dumped it in January.
Okay.
So.
That is such a Zack Snyder thing. But
And I wrote this. I wrote painting windows my favorite scene of the series.
Okay, yeah.
So tell them about this.
Like I said, is burnt from the sun, and they race into this warehouse, and he's like, stay in the car or something, and he runs out and is closing doors and everything. Then he looks at this big window that the sunlight's coming in, and he's like, how can I cover this window? Look at all this paint. And, this is the other claw thing. So he gets his claws out, and he's just puncturing paint cans with his claws, and it looks, they do it like 3 or 4 times.
It's so dumb looking.
And he's like throwing paint on the window, and then
very
after
inaccurately,
just very slow motion, very dramatic. And then after that, he goes and he puts a tarp over her and runs her into like this like cargo container.
Shipping container.
And it's like, I think you could have just put the tarp over her and she'd be fine. And then immediately after that, he takes it off and she's already healed.
Yeah.
That was a minute and a half wasted of screen time. And
I don't like getting caught up in what I would dub cinema sins of movies. Yeah. But this is so ludicrous. We can't help but point it out.
Oh, it's so funny.
It is so funny, and I doubt that there is going to be a scene in this series I will like more than Scott Speedman, who is Michael Corvinus, throwing paint on a window, because it's so.
He's basically going like, ugh.
I painted our bathroom earlier this year, and it took 3, maybe 4 coats to make it white, and it's pretty hard to keep it even. Just dumping paint on a window is not going to work. It is not going to work, I promise you.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny. And then, funny enough, Micah and I, the 2 little naive kids that we are, our eyes were glued to the screen for this next part.
We had a little bit of a
for the
side
sex
bet.
Part.
Yeah.
Because
we were trying to bet which nudity there would be, because the MPAA said there's nudity. I'm sorry.
And we're like, oh my gosh, is she gonna go full frontal or something? Show her boobs, something.
Not full frontal. I never thought that.
I didn't think that either. I don't know why I said that. But like, it's Kate Beckinsale, pretty big. And it's just so fascinating throughout film when people are naked and how that affects their careers.
Yeah.
Especially when, it's just so fascinating. Like, it's killed people's careers.
Uh-huh.
You can argue, because of them going nude at all,
yeah,
or at the wrong time in their career to go nude.
But as pointed out by David Sims on a episode of Blank Check, I don't remember which one, he said it's funny how in America it can like make or break someone, and it's this huge thing, but then in like France, they're like, oh yeah, I did like a topless scene just the other day, and I'm like the biggest French actress in the world. Who cares? Yeah, it's just like because totally
of the cultural, basically of our culture, it's just so fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
it was the episode on The Gift, because they were talking about the Sam Raimi movie, The Gift. They were talking about how, what is her name?
Katie Holmes.
Katie Holmes did a lot of nudity.
She goes naked, and it is bad.
Well, and it like is part of the reason maybe why her career didn't take off. Yes. It's what they argued in
Very
that
fascinating,
episode.
And I would agree, especially the nature at which she did it, which I know you and I have talked about, because she's basically Kitty in Arrested Development, and she's like, say goodbye to these. She's so bad. That movie's so boring.
It was not good. It was not a good Sam Raimi movie.
Okay, but in this movie, they're getting it on, and our eyes are just glued, because we're like, is she going to do it? And they both are very naked, but they like artfully cover things up.
Yeah.
I read that the scene was much longer.
Yeah.
But Kate Beckinsale requested that a lot of it get cut. A lot of the nudity get cut. So yes, she is fully naked, but you really don't see anything.
Yeah.
Later on, you get the boobs. If you're worried and you're like, where is this nudity? I didn't really get my nudity. You will get it.
Well, it's also fascinating just on like a macro level, because like rated R movies in like the early 2000s and 90s would just like have nudity, like lock stock. Like they would just have nudity. 2 Smoking Barrels, which I believe there's nudity in, by the way. But now it's there's just a lot less nudity in movies, American films anyway. And so it's funny, because when I saw there was nudity in this movie, this is so funny that we're just harping on this topic, but
it's fascinating if you think about it.
It is, and I just thought like, you know what, this does seem like the type of movie that could have nudity, but if it was made today, I don't think they would even like think of anything nudity to put in.
I think that her costumes would be much more sexy, and there would be no nudity. Funny enough, if it was made today, I do think that. Yeah, and I don't even mean like her boobs are hanging out. I just think it would show the female figure more. Yeah, because still in this movie, there's not much other than her wearing like high heel boots. Here's what's nuts though. So Selene, and maybe vampires have special powers that give them like powder over their skin or something to keep them from chafing, because she's wearing all leather. Her and she's wearing nothing. She's completely nude under the suit. Yeah. Which, could you imagine? That's for the movie, Micah. That's what, as they say, movie magic. But like, if you I can't. If you ripped a pretty bad fart, she probably was wearing and then you have like so much in the leather, baby powder on her. I'm sure. Oh my gosh. But as you pointed out, is probably a spandex like pleather situation. I think so. Yeah. Which would make a lot more sense. Especially, I think we're out of the leather thing. Yeah. And I wrote, does she have a child? We were trying to bet if in one of the future movies she'd be pregnant. They will have a werewolf vampire. Well, we know that vampires can get pregnant because Lucian's lover was pregnant. Yeah. So I think, here's my guess. I think episode 4 of the series, A New Hope, is going to be actually it'd be episode 1. Episode 1 of the series, The Phantom Menace, I believe is going, and that's only a joke for Mike Combs. I believe that movie, like the plot will be either she is pregnant or she has had a child or is going to have a child. And they have to protect it because it's going to be a hybrid. And it's also called Awakening, Underworld Awakening. So it would be even more of a threat because she becomes even more powerful in this movie. Yeah, and do we know what those powers are or what they do? Oh, no. Absolutely not. No. Do they seem to have any effect on the story? No. Nope. But, anyway. So then they go and they visit Discount Paul Bettany. Yeah, man, it really took several shots before Micah and I confirmed that it was not him. It looked so much like him. But he is in exile, and he for like 300 years, and he's supposed to have no contact with anybody. Guy's been busy, if you catch my drift. Yeah. Not only with the ladies. And he's been listening to one of the worst rock songs I've ever heard in my life. What was it? I don't know. Oh, okay. It was just like it actually seemed even dated for 2006, where it was like kind of like an old 9 Inch Nails sound, but not by them, so it doesn't sound good. Yeah. But he also has like werewolf pets. Yeah. So that's kind of fun. They need to go to him to get information. Oh boy, we need more exposition. Yeah, he's like the librarian or something in a way. So they try and figure out what the name of that song was. And they are separated. She is like put through this trapdoor, and these werewolves are coming at her, and she kills both of them. And then Michael kills another werewolf. I'd say both pretty good. Mm-hmm. Pretty gory, Mimi likey. So I think that this song is probably called "The Undertaker," and it's written by Pussifier and Danny Lohner. Well, sounds like the perfect song for that scene. Then these are words I never thought I would say on a podcast, but here we are. So they finally make it in. They do kill the vampire girls, and they talk to this guy. Yeah, and he's like, hey, remember, there's this guy named Corvinus, and he explains like the plot again for like the 6th time. And I'm like, what is going on? And then Am I stupid? Well, again, it's so funny because the first movie we were like, what is going on? And this movie's like, remember the last movie, and then remember what we explained. And I'm like, okay, I looked it up on Wikipedia. At this point, I don't need you to tell me what this is again. Also, you're telling us so much, and it actually is working against you because it makes everything more confusing. I know. But then in this scene, he's explaining stuff, and he's explaining specifically though the imprisonment of William, which that's new information. It does pertain to Selene because her they do a little bit more backstory for her. Yeah, her father is the one who built the prison that William is currently in. Therefore, like her and she knows, and she's the only one who knows where it is. Yeah. Oh my gosh! Hope no one gets her blood memories. Yeah, but
what's a really funny detail that you and I were laughing about is, so in the last movie we find out that Victor was like double playing her the whole time. In this movie, every vampire is like, "Oh, so you found out that Victor like killed your family on purpose?"
Oh yeah, everyone knew he was lying to her.
So no one told
for
her.
Hundreds, like 600 years, and
Yeah.
no one thought to tell her at any point, like, "Hey, I actually think it's pretty screwed up what they're doing to you. They're lying to you."
I also think it hurts the first movie that like it's cool that Lucian knows and
Yeah.
Victor knows and Craven, like those three people can know.
Yeah.
But like having like Marcus know and then having this guy know, this is a random guy.
Yeah. Everyone
he knows.
Everyone knows.
And I think there was another vampire as well that's like, "Oh, you found out. Okay."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, you're up to speed. Okay, so we don't have to like pretend anymore. Cool." Like I can
that.
I can
That's
delete that
awful.
unread email that I've had sitting on my computer reminding me not to talk
Right?
about this.
It's like whenever they have a meeting at the end, and it's like, and let the minutes reflect that we still will not tell Selene the secret to who she is as a vampire.
And then another thing that's just this speaks to the writing of this movie, where he says, you know, there's two types of truth or something like that. He's like, or there's like there's history. He's like,
There's history, and then there's herstory.
he's like, there's history of what you've been told, and then there's the truth. And then he proceeds to explain the Corvinus thing, and that Marcus is the first vampire. And this is what Selene says. "Oh, so the legends are true." And I was like, we know this information.
She knows this information too.
This isn't new to her.
Is she stupid?
And it sounds like everyone just knows this information. So I don't know why this is like a reveal to her.
Yeah. I don't know either.
It's crazy.
But they learned the imprisonment thing, and so they go next to Alexander, right? But how do they get to him?
They they don't turn into bats, unfortunately.
No.
But they make it to him somehow.
Do they know to get to him, or are they like captured by him? I can't quite remember. Oh, I think this place is infiltrated by his people.
Yeah.
And they swoop them up.
Yeah.
So her and Michael are with this guy now. Great. Moore's backstory.
I do like, though, that like I was kind of expecting this to be a third enemy, or I guess a second enemy, but he's like not a bad guy.
No.
And that was cool.
I do like, so we learned that's the dad of Marcus and William. And Selene's like, okay, so you can kill them.
Yeah.
Or, you can get rid of them. But I'm also confused by this. Okay, this is something I'm also confused by. No, we'll get to it. We'll get to it later. So something I like about, I guess his character, I don't know, something that Selene's like wrestling with this guy is he's unwilling to necessarily do what needs to be done.
Kill his sons.
Because it's his sons.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's cool. So they're there and learning all this stuff, and she's like, the only thing that can be done is he must be killed.
Yeah.
He's too powerful. He's too mad. If he unleashes his brother, who knows what will happen.
Right.
So while that's happening, Marcus shows up. Yep. And they have a fight. He impales Michael on something. And then Selene fights him, but she's no match for him. And this is kind of the stuff that I just don't think was illustrated very well, where it's like she's no match for him. And then it's like they say like she can never beat him. Like no one can. Like no one's strong enough to fight him or beat him. And it's like they can't figure out anything.
Well,
but
what's cool is when he flies in, there is a shot.
Okay.
Where, I mean, it's the real actor, and it's like a wire, like he's on a wire, and in the corner, there's like people on this boat, and he swings his left arm and hits this guy, and this guy goes flying, and then he comes and like kills the guy who's at the forefront of the camera. It's the funniest thing. We watched it, I think, 3 or 4 times, just like laughing.
It was so silly.
It was great. And then he comes in and kills his dad.
But not before. So yeah, he like he steals the key.
Oh yeah.
So now he's in possession of that. And then Selene's like, I told you so.
Yeah.
And then the guy's like, drink my blood and you will be powerful and you can defeat him, which I just don't think they showcase very well.
Yeah.
So she drinks his blood and now she has
the strength of
Venus
an
blood.
immortal human. I don't know what that means. And
Snooze.
they don't
So-
show her use like new powers.
No.
Or anything.
Which brings me to my next thing.
Yeah.
That I hate about this series. I know it's a strong word, but
Yeah.
that's how I feel. The guns.
Yes. Please.
So this guy is some super vampire, and all we can think to do is just shoot him.
Yeah.
When we know that does diddly squat. And then later on in the big fight scene 2, werewolf gets unleashed, William, which we've established looks badass. And all they can think to do
is shoot
him
and punch it.
All these people like got ready, suited up in a helicopter, ready to go, and all they brought were some guns.
Yeah.
They couldn't figure out like, oh, this is the weapon that can take him down.
Well, this is like such a blockbuster issue.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of comic book movies and thereby comic books. Where like and I'm gonna cite a movie that my sister doesn't like, funny enough. But like Doctor Strange, I think, is a good example of this. The movie's going along and it's like, how are they gonna stop Dormammu? And you think, okay, it's gonna be it's gonna be another like big fight and like deactivate the beam or whatever. But instead, he traps him in a time loop. And I'm like, that is clever and therefore interesting and a use of Doctor Strange's powers. So it's actually, to me, one of the more memorable endings to any of the Marvel movies because it's such a thing. It's so wild.
Yeah.
And even like Iron Man, not Iron Man, Endgame, that is like, you got to punch. They got to just like fight Thanos at the end, but they have to get this glove away from him, which is so practical. You know what they're doing. Like in this movie, they got to get the key away, but then it's like Iron Man has to use that key, which is the glove, and snap his fingers and like make it happen to destroy Thanos. And that is clever, I think. And it's a good use and it's good problem solving.
Yeah.
Like another thing, and this is a silly example, but like in the comics, one of Spider-Man's first fights with Sandman, he defeats him by vacuuming him. And that's so silly, but it's like, yeah, that makes sense. But this movie's like, oh, it's a vampire. Maybe they're going to figure out a way to like, impale this
Wouldn't
vampire.
That be more interesting?
But
to do it traditionally, to figure out a way to traditionally do it. Whether or not it's like they're fighting forever and she ran out of bullets, so she's reduced to using this wooden plank.
Yeah. Well, and even in the first movie, she defeats Victor by cutting his head off, which isn't like how you defeat a vampire.
Yeah.
And in this movie, it's like she pushes him into a helicopter and it chops him up. And that actually looked cool. I was actually kind of into that.
Yeah.
But it's also like, but that's not how you defeat a vampire.
And
you know what I'm saying?
I just don't think they illustrated well that she drinks this guy's blood and now she's stronger. Okay, so now she can punch him a couple more times and he punches her and she doesn't fall down as fast.
I didn't see what it did to create... to make her stronger at all.
And it's just so annoying that it's just like shooting and shooting and shooting. And it's oh my gosh, it's so boring.
Well, and that is, I mean, maybe that's why the next movie will pop more because it is a prequel. Guns haven't been invented yet. So it will be like swords will be the weapon of choice.
And arrows.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just, I mean, we so recently watched Blade for this podcast, even though for us it was like 6 months ago. But it's just like stark, the contrast. And even in Blade 2 pretty much has this kind of thing where it's like, here's an elite group of like people who shoot vampires and stuff, but they just do it in a much more interesting way. See our episode on Blade 2.
Yeah.
And this just feels like boring gunplay.
Yeah. I mean, his whole thing too, his name's Blade. He uses blades.
Well, I think it's the difference between like a run-of-the-mill action gun movie where they have tons of guns and you're like, okay, cool, I get it. And like John Wick. John Wick has a ton of guns.
Gun fu is like the thing, right?
Yeah,
that's what they
but
say.
like each of those movies, you see it done in such interesting ways that typically you're not bored by it.
Yeah. Oh, honey, I am not bored by it.
Yeah.
Man, the times this year I have just randomly thought of John Wick 4.
I know.
It's
great. It's great.
A lot.
It's still really high on my list of this year's movies.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
It was so good. And it so helped that we had just recently been to Paris.
Yeah.
because that scene was so much more fun.
Yeah.
We watched it back to back and stopped our recording, went and saw it again so that we could finish
I
recording.
know. It was so good.
I think that's like a 3-hour episode we did or something like that.
Was it really?
I think it's our longest main feed episode we've ever done.
Wow.
Only to be beaten by our episode with Jeremy Eden on the Batman, but that was only on Patreon.
Mm.
And that episode, I think, was 3 hours. As long as
Really?
that movie. I think it was.
There's 3 hours worth of things to say about.
Yeah. But anyway, that's. I mean, I guess we kind of like talked about the movie.
Gnarly how Michael defeats the werewolf. Just rips half of its head off.
Yeah, which again, like
A little anticlimactic.
that's cool, but it's not like problem solving.
No.
And I
It's
think,
just a test of strength. And he just was stronger and he won. And it's
I
like,
mean-
okay, fine. But couldn't we? I don't know. It could have been more creative.
let's go back to John Wick for a second.
Okay.
John Wick 1, he gets to the bad guy, and they just fight in the rain. I think it's one of the least exciting action sequences in the whole series.
Yeah.
I love John Wick 1, okay? John Wick 4, he gets to the end. He has to duel Bill Skarsgård, who then uses Donnie Yen. They do this whole thing, and he problem solves a way to not kill Donnie Yen and also kill Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah.
So the climax of that movie, I think, is like 10 times better than the first movie, which many argue is the best John Wick movie. Like, John Wick 4 did problem solving, so the ending was much more satisfying. And that's kind of, I think I'm making this up as I go here, but I do think that's like how you make a good action climax is you have to solve a problem instead of just punch your way out of it.
Yeah.
You know? Even Captain Marvel, I feel like, is another example of a movie where the ending of that was like a reversal almost, where remember Jude Law's like, fight me like a man, like, don't use your powers. And she goes, nah, and just like zaps him.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, oh, that was like a weird
Yeah.
reversal of it. And that's like a different way of problem solving and interesting.
I do think since this movie is like 20 years old now,
Yeah.
there is part of that where it's like we're not there yet to do.
Right. You know, I'm comparing it
back.
to John Wick, which is like a response to these type of movies for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's that.
I think you can still criticize it though.
Absolutely.
For being anticlimactic. And I think they could have figured it out. Use the gun on the werewolf with a silver bullet. I don't, in an interesting way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't just like rip its head off. I don't know.
Yeah. Even if it does look cool. But I'll say it again. I like this movie because there's a funny vampire punch. A vampire hunts and pecks on a keyboard. A man inexplicably throws paint all over a window. And the werewolf in this looks absolutely stunning. And for those 4 reasons, I like this movie. And it'll be tough to top, I think, of this series.
Well, hopefully the next movie, since it's a prequel, we'll get that werewolf again.
Oh, yeah.
At some point.
Oh, yeah. We probably will. I'm nervous about the prequel, though, because they've already gone over the Corvinus thing
I know.
ad nauseum.
I know.
So I kind of don't need it anymore.
No, I don't. I surely didn't need it the first time.
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, they're going to rope Bill Nye back into the series. Like, let the guy go. Let him alone, please.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah. We kind of blew past the third act, but
But also, like, what else is more to the...
Yeah.
I, again, like the sets. I liked the cool, like, snowy, mountainous, like, ruins of this little town thing that they went to. That imagery was cool. Yeah, that stuff was great, especially compared to the last movie. It does look like they had more money to put into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
But I didn't like it, the movie.
No, I don't think it's a good movie.
Yeah.
But
it was an improvement.
I will say, I don't know if I said this last episode or not, but I was always convinced that these were based on video games because Resident Evil came out around the same time. And I thought these were video games. And looking at the covers as we're getting them from the library, I go, it's no wonder I thought these were video games because they look like video game covers.
Yeah.
And this one especially.
Yeah.
So I think when I would like look it up on IMDb or something, I just assume like 3 out of 4 of these were actually, video games or something. but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we talked
What
about that
country
last
are they in
episode.
this movie? Did we ever talk about that? Like Romania or something?
Unobtainium?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
No, I have no clue where they are.
Okay. Did they ever say? They had to have said.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway.
Sorry.
I don't care.
But you know what I like? I like that this movie doesn't do the dumb thing where it's like 10 miles outside of Czechoslovakia. And it's like, I don't care. Like, does this pertain to the plot at all? You don't need to tell me where this is.
Well, sometimes it's important.
Sometimes it is, but I would say probably at least 60% of movies could not have those in movies, especially when
You know what? They
I've
probably
talked about
didn't
this
tell
before.
us because in the first movie, we don't even know what city it takes place in.
No, it's Underworld.
Oh, okay.
But it's that funny thing where like they show the Eiffel Tower and it says Paris, France, and you're like, yeah, like you don't have to do that when you show like one of the most famous monuments ever erected.
What like franchise is it? I feel like we've covered it on here where like almost felt like every scene. I think it might have been Fast and Furious.
It was X-Men. Days of Future Past.
It was like a different location, like every 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it was like, and it specified every time, and a lot of times it was like London, and you're looking at Big Ben, and you're like, yeah, I know. Like I'm
also,
duh.
why are we jumping around everywhere?
Yeah. Oh, remember how bad X-Men Apocalypse was?
I don't want to think about it ever again.
Yeah, this movie is like The Godfather compared to X-Men Apocalypse.
Yeah.
So next week. It is Underworld.
Rise of the Lycans? That's my guess.
Yeah, Rise of the Lycans.
Are you serious? Is that the title?
Yeah.
I made that up.
No, you did not.
I did. Maybe I saw it somewhere.
You must have seen it because that's so specific.
Is it though?
It is Rise of the Lycans, yeah. But
they don't say Lycans very much in this movie, if at all.
They said it's so much less.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up with that? But this month on Patreon, you can listen to our episode on Howl's Moving Castle. And then next month, we're going to be doing the Ghost Rider 1 and then December Ghost Rider 2. Yeah, go sign up for Patreon. Link in the description. We are still trying to get to 50 patrons by the end of the year. I'd like to think that by now it's happened. But then we launched the Pixar podcast in addition to everything else. Sign up. Sign up. Sign up. Sign up 3 times each. No, I don't know. But please sign up. Sign up. I'm begging you. But yeah, and then next week, yes, Rise of the Lycans. And looking at my calendar, I saw that last Friday, I would have seen Killers of the Flower Moon and the Thursday before you did. So I'm just here to tell you, everybody, it's the best movie of the year, even though we're recording this a month earlier. But I'm assuming it's the best movie of the year and one of Scorsese's best, which is crazy.
You're going to have to remind me that I am seeing that movie because I will 100% forget.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah, funny thing for the listener, the movie is actually 3.5 hours long, 3:35, I think. I'm not being facetious, which I'm very excited about. But with a baby, that makes it complicated. So Jordan is going to see it before me, and then the next day I'm going to see it. We're seeing it on 2 separate days so that it would be way too hard to have someone babysit for like 4.5 hours at this stage of the baby's development. So that's funny. See you next week.
See ya.